Hello, my incredible family. Welcome back. Today, we're diving into a story of heartbreak, betrayal, and the jaw-dropping moment a woman decided to reclaim her power in the most unforgettable way. Get ready to feel every emotion as we unveil a tale of justice served. The morning sun, usually a comforting presence, felt like a spotlight on Aisha's trembling hands as she smoothed the crisp edges of the legal documents. Divorce papers. Each word on the page was a shard of glass, reflecting months of a hollow marriage, a love that had become a bitter lie. Her reflection in the antique mirror showed a woman meticulously dressed, her silk blouse a shield, her carefully applied makeup a mask. But in her eyes, a storm raged, a quiet, burning fury beneath layers of grace. This wasn't just a confrontation, it was a reckoning, a reclaiming of a self nearly lost to whispered doubts and blatant disrespect. She closed her eyes, picturing the faces of David's family, their approving smiles at her husband's betrayal. No, today, the silence would break. Today, Aisha would make sure they all heard. Miles away, the air vibrated with a different kind of energy, giddy laughter, the clinking of champagne flutes, and the sweet, cloying smell of baby cake. David, oblivious to the storm gathering, beamed. He was the undisputed king of this pastel-themed castle, his hand resting proudly on Clara's visibly rounded belly. His mother, sisters, and aunts clucked around them, showering Clara with gifts and adoration. David felt a rush of satisfaction, a feeling of having expertly navigated a tricky situation. Aisha, his wife, was a distant, soon-to-be resolved detail. He raised his glass, utterly convinced of his own cleverness, basking in the glow of his new family. The notion that his carefully constructed world was about to crumble in a spectacular, public fashion was not even a whisper in his champagne-fizzed mind. The cheerful clatter of the baby shower abruptly ceased the moment Aisha stepped through the ornate double doors. It wasn't her striking dark dress or the perfect coil of her hair that drew every eye, but the quiet, undeniable authority in her stride. A hush, thick and sudden, fell over the room, as if the very air had sucked away the joyous chatter. David's mother, mid-sentence, froze with a tiny pink onesie in her hands. David, still basking in his self-satisfied glow, finally turned, his smile dissolving into a bewildered frown. Clara, clutching a gift, went ashen, her eyes wide with dawning horror. Aisha walked directly towards David, her heels a soft, rhythmic tap against the polished floor, each step a deliberate hammer blow to the festive illusion. There was no theatrical outburst, no raised voice, just a piercing, unwavering gaze fixed on David's suddenly pale face. She reached him, her hand steady as she extended the folded legal documents. These, Aisha's voice was low, cutting through the silence like a razor, are for you, David. She placed them precisely in his outstretched, bewildered hand. They're divorce papers. Consider this your baby shower gift from your wife. The words, delivered with a calm, devastating precision, landed like a bomb. A collective gasp rippled through the stunned guests as the cheerful room fractured, the true meaning of the scene crashing down on them all. Wow, that's a moment, isn't it, on Family? The silence in that room must have been deafening. What do you think is going through David's mind right now? And what about Clara? Share your predictions and reactions in the comments. Let's keep this conversation going. David stared at the papers in his hand as if they were a foreign object, his face a mask of disbelief struggling with a flicker of dawning horror. Aisha, what is this? His voice was a strained whisper, a pathetic attempt to reclaim control, to reduce this public spectacle to a private misunderstanding. He glanced frantically at his mother, then back at Aisha, a desperate plea in his eyes for her to explain this away. "This isn't the place," he muttered, trying to push the documents back into her hand, as if by rejecting them he could erase the last minute. But Aisha's hand remained firm, unmoving. "It's exactly the place, David," she countered, her voice still quiet but radiating an unyielding steel. "Since this is where you chose to celebrate your new life without the decency to end our old one." A heavy, suffocating silence pressed down on the room, punctuated only by the nervous cough of an aunt and the soft, almost imperceptible sniffle from Clara, who now looked utterly devastated. David's mother, a woman usually quick to assert her opinions, finally found her voice, a strained, disapproving murmur. "Aisha, darling, this is highly inappropriate. We can discuss this later." Her eyes darted around the room, full of frantic damage control. But Aisha didn't flinch. She simply met David's gaze, then his mother's, her dark eyes holding a lifetime of ignored pain and now an undeniable resolve. "There's nothing left to discuss later, Joan," Aisha replied, using David's mother's full name, a subtle but significant defiance. "The discussion is happening now, for everyone to see." She stood her ground, an immovable force, daring them all to deny the truth she had just laid bare. That's a powerful stand Aisha's making, isn't it? David's trying to resist, his mother's attempting to smooth things over, but Aisha is unwavering. What do you think this silence is doing to David, and how do you feel about his mother's reaction? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. We're just getting started. Understood. We'll merge Acts 4, 5, and 6, focusing on the forced proximity, the backstory unveiling through their tense interaction, and the unexpected internal shift or fragile bond that forms, not between them, but within Aisha as she solidifies her resolve and finds a quiet strength. The word count will be adjusted for these merged acts, approximately 300 words total. The guests, now frozen in uncomfortable tableau, couldn't bring themselves to leave, nor could they restart the festivities. The air was thick with the unsaid, binding Aisha and David in a crucible of their own making. David, still clutching the papers, finally spoke, his voice hoarse. "Aisha, please, let's talk about this privately, for old time's sake." His gaze flickered to Clara, whose silent tears now stained her pale cheeks, then back to Aisha, a desperate plea for a return to normalcy. But old time's sake was a fresh wound for Aisha. Old times? Aisha's laugh was brittle, devoid of humor. "Is that what you call it, David? The nights I spent alone while you were with her?" Her eyes, unblinking, held his. "Do you remember the day you proposed, under the cherry blossom tree? You promised forever. You said I was your world." The memory hung in the air, a stark contrast to the present, a ghost of a love that David had carelessly discarded. His jaw tightened. He remembered the easy joy, the shared dreams, the way her laughter used to light up their home. Now her eyes held only a chilling clarity, reflecting a strength born of his betrayal. She didn't need him to acknowledge it. She just needed herself to. A quiet certainty settled over Aisha. She saw David's fleeting shame, Clara's silent despair, his family's discomfort. It wasn't about them anymore. It was about her. She looked around the room, not with anger, but with a profound, almost peaceful sense of detachment. She was no longer just the wronged wife. She was a woman choosing herself. This public declaration wasn't just revenge. It was an exorcism, cutting the ties that had bound her to a lie. She felt a subtle, powerful shift within, a silent vow to herself. The bond she felt now was with her own resilience, a fragile but undeniable strength blooming in the wreckage of her marriage. David, watching her, saw not just anger, but an unbreakable resolve, and for the first time, a flicker of genuine loss crossed his face, not just for the public embarrassment, but for the woman he had irrevocably broken and was now truly losing. That was a lot to unpack, wasn't it? Aisha's inner strength is truly shining through, even as she revisits painful memories. What do you think about David's reaction as he starts to grasp the depth of his actions? And how do you feel about Aisha's quiet internal triumph? Share your insights and theories in the comments below. The fragile, forced peace shattered as David, stung by Aisha's calm truth, lashed out. "What about my happiness, Aisha? Did that ever matter to you?" His voice, though still hushed, was laced with venom, the self-pity boiling over. "You were always so controlled, So distant. Clara understands me. She gives me a family. His words hung in the air, cruel, desperate, and utterly dismissive of their shared history. His mother and sisters, witnessing this raw display, looked aghast. Clara, eyes wide, shrank back into her seat. Aisha flinched, a sharp, involuntary tremor, as if struck. The casual cruelty of his words, implying her inadequacy, her coldness, was a final, devastating blow. A single tear, brave and defiant, tracked a path down her cheek. Distant? Aisha finally spoke, her voice thick with suppressed grief and rage. I was distant because you were already gone, David. Because I was holding together a marriage you were actively tearing apart with another woman. And you dare to stand here, surrounded by people who claim to love you, and imply I am the problem? The words were not a plea, but a scorching indictment. The last vestiges of their shared life, any lingering hope, evaporated into the tense, horrified silence. The bond, once a cherished promise, was now unequivocally destroyed, burned to ashes by David's callous disregard. David watched her, truly watched her, as her words resonated with a sickening truth. The accusations from his wife, the silent judgment from some of the guests, Clara's heartbroken sniffles, it all crashed down. His own mother, usually his fiercest defender, averted her gaze, her face a mask of shame. He saw the cold, hard facts of his actions, not through his own self-serving lens, but through Aisha's clear, wounded eyes. He had chosen casual pleasure over enduring love, a fleeting fantasy over a profound commitment. He had not only betrayed Aisha, but publicly humiliated her, and in turn, disgraced himself. A wave of gut-wrenching regret washed over him, a crushing weight of realization. He saw, for the first time, not the problematic wife, but the magnificent woman he had carelessly cast aside. He saw his freedom, his future, unraveling before his eyes, replaced by the bitter taste of consequence. Aisha, however, felt a different kind of reckoning. The sting of David's words still lingered, but beneath it, a powerful, cleansing fire had ignited. His desperate accusations had paradoxically freed her. There was no going back. There was no reconciliation to hope for. Only forward. She looked at David one last time, not with hatred, but with a quiet, profound sadness for the man he had become, for the beautiful beginning they once shared, now irrevocably lost. Her choice was made, not in anger, but in the serene conviction of self-preservation. She turned, her head held high, the tear now dried, leaving a faint, shimmering trail on her cheek. She didn't need an apology from David, or a validation from his family. She had her own hard-won peace. With a final, steady breath, Aisha turned and walked towards the door. The rustle of her dress was the only sound in the utterly silent room. No one dared to stop her. She didn't look back. As she stepped out, the cool, crisp air of the late afternoon felt like a balm, a whispered promise of a future unburdened by deceit. She pictured the cherry blossom tree where David had once promised forever. Now, a new tree will grow, one she would nurture herself, strong and resilient. The baby shower, the pastel chaos, the betrayals, they faded behind her, a painful but necessary chapter closed. Aisha walked into the sunlight, a woman reborn, carrying nothing but her dignity and the fierce, undeniable joy of her own rediscovered self. My dear online family, that's the powerful, emotional journey of Aisha. She walked into a nightmare and walked out into her own dawn. What are your final thoughts on her strength? What do you hope her future holds? And how do you think David will live with the choices he made? Please share all your reflections and feelings in the comments below. We poured our hearts into this one, and we'd love to hear yours. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories that move you.